Hello everybody, Stormy here, and welcome to a quick VR dev tutorial. This is a tutorial that I'm making off the back of Valem's tutorial, where he explains how to set up an XR game using the Unity plugin. And the one that he makes, he includes a model for us to use for the hands, but in my project that I'm working on, in the end I'm going to have a voxel art style for all of my assets, and so I had voxel styled hands, fingers and everything that I had already made and rigged up, and I wanted to use those instead of the Oculus hands that he provided. So I worked for 2 or 3 hours last night getting them set up, and they worked fine, totally great, animated and everything. It's just a bit more work than simply plopping in the assets that he had. So I'm going to go through real quick and show you what all you need to get started. So the very first thing is you're going to need his Oculus Hands package. So you can download that from his YouTube page. His specific video that he implements them with, I think, is episode 2 of his XR series. You can just go to his page and watch that tutorial series, and it'll get you up to snuff on everything you need. But then once you have this Oculus Hands, you're going to see there's some prefabs. There's a left and a right prefab. Yours will probably look a little bit different than mine just because I had to re-import some stuff, but all the assets should be the same. So you're going to have this right hand and then a left hand, and they're gray, and then you're going to at some point have this hand presence prefab, and this is very important because it's what kept me from getting my hands animated for the longest time, because I had made the prefab for the model that is going to be animated, but I had never made the script bound hand presence prefab that then I put the hand model in, which is very important. So we have the original one here, and then we have a left and a right, and these would normally have the left and the right Oculus hand in there, but we took them out because we took it out of the right because we were testing. I can actually put it back in there now if I want to, so I'll just slide that back in there. But yeah, so these are your prefabs that are going to be spawned, that are going to animate your hand and spawn in your hand. So these are going to go in your VR rig, camera offset, and then your left and right hand components. You're going to have this model prefab, and it will normally, like for the right hand, you'll have the right hand prefab for presence in there, and same with the left, you'll have that. For what we're doing, you're going to make a copy of those, and then I'm going to move them to a different folder where all of my other models and stuff are. So I created a models folder, and then in here we have the Oculus models, which these are the controller models that we use if we don't have the hands working the way that they're supposed to. And then we go to this models folder again, and you can see I made a separate Hermes folder. Hermes is the name of the robot that I took the hands from. It's another project of mine. And if we go inside here, you can see I've got a bunch of different files. So I've got the materials file, which is just what I apply to the model for my hands. I've got the actual PNG file that is the texture for the hands, and again, this is a voxel model that I'm using, and so it's got a very small texture because it doesn't need a lot of colors. And it's also vertex painted, so it stretches the color across a square of texture. And then we've got several of these. So we've got, like, this one is an FBX file. This one is also an FBX file. These are all different versions of the same hand. And we've got this one up here, which is the one that we use constantly. It's called Hermes Hand R2 Union Blend. And basically all that boils down to is this is the most updated hand that I have in the project. And so anytime I need to edit something, I open that file, I make my changes, I store a backup somewhere else, and then that's the file that I save so that it automatically updates all the models in the project. Then I export an FBX file, which is what I actually use to do the animations with. And you can see, if we go in here, we've got those copied hand presence prefabs. There's a left and a right. And then we also have these animation controllers, which you can see it opens up this little window over here. And those are also taken from what Valem had before was just in the main area. I made a folder called Animator, but there are these two hand presence animators, so they're going to take whatever model you give it and they're going to animate accordingly. So if we bring this over here, you're going to see it's the blend tree that we set up with the two parameters. We got grip and trigger, and it goes into a blend tree, and that blend tree has the 4 animations that you can swipe between, and it'll have a preview of the model down here. And we just took a copy of that, and then we're going to switch out the animations in the model that it's using. So in order to get copies of these, we're actually just going to take the right one because they're both the same technically. They're just being used for 2 different model prefabs. So we're going to make a copy of that, bring it over into Hermes, and then we're going to make a left and a right. And then you can see we have the Union L prefab asset. So this is actually based on the FBX file. So if we open the right one up here, you can see it is using this model. So it's coming from this Union R FBX file. So technically we don't need any of the other FBX files in the scene. We just need this one. I'm just keeping them as backups. But technically this is the only one that we're actually using. So we right click on this FBX file and we hit create and then prefab variant, and that's going to make a prefab that then we can use to spawn that model in elsewhere, because we can't just spawn in an FBX with the code set up the way it is. But we have this Union R, which is that FBX made into a prefab, and essentially what it does, it sets the root of our hand as the root of the prefab, and then the armature is what we're going to be making most of our edits to. So you can see we've got some changes there. And then we also have a couple of changes here, although I believe these are in here by default. And so when you first get the hand to show up, it probably won't be animated because you probably won't have the animator down here set up yet. You'll probably just get this in the scene and then slap it onto the hand presence so that you can see it. But it probably will be facing flat. So like if you make a fist, the hand will probably be laying on top of your hand, and you'll have to rotate it sideways. So you'll most likely use the armature, which is on top of the actual model. You'll probably rotate that to get it into the place that you want it. That's what I did. And then you can see over here we have the animator at the root, and it's important that the animator is at the root. If there is more than one animator, or the animator is not at root, you've broken something and you need to start over again. It's very, very important because the script that actually animates the parameters over here in the animator controller, these over here, the grip and the trigger, these 2 variables will only be changed if the animator is in the root of that prefab. If it's further down in the list, the script won't see it, and then you'll just have an always idle hand, which isn't good. But once you have that in there, you're going to have a avatar. So this avatar gets created manually. So you'll actually have to click on your FBX file once it gets imported. You'll have to go to rig, and you want to leave it as generic, but then it'll normally say no avatar here. You'll click create from this avatar, and then you'll choose your armature, and then you'll just keep that at standard, and then you'll hit apply, and it'll add this little armature guide down here. So then when you go into your prefab, you'll just drag that armature from this window into here, and it'll set it for you. You're also going to have that animator controller, which is this guy down here, which again has the box that you can slide them around, and it has the 4 different animations. That is going to be this file right here. You slap that in there, and again, that's why you're going to want 2 of them, because you want one for the left, one for the right, so that each prefab has a different animator. So you can see this one is right H anim, and if I switch this is left H anim. So they're 2 different animators so that you get a left and a right. Also, I think most people, they're probably going to make 2 copies of that hand and actually manually scale in the model maker software like Blender or Maya or something like that. They're actually going to make a second copy of the hand with all the animations on it. I don't need that. It's going to be made of voxels and stuff, so it's pretty simple. So all I had to do to make my left thing work is switch out the animator, and then just scale my hand in the X and change some rotation values, and boom, I had a left hand. It was super easy. It's even still using the same avatar. It's just using a different animator, which is awesome. So once I had the first one set up, I just made a duplicate and changed those, and boom, I was done. As soon as I had the left hand animator made, which again is just duplicating and changing some numbers. But yeah, so when you get in here with this animator, it's got two values. So it's got grip and it's got trigger. And now I can show you what it does because there's actually a model in this one. So let's get a side view here. So you're going to have the grip trigger, which can go between 0 and 1, and you're going to have the trigger, which goes between 0 and 1. And doing either one of those makes it go either horizontally or vertically, and doing both a little bit makes it go across the middle here diagonally. So you're going to slide this over, and that does the X, and then you do the trigger, and that does the Y. And so you can see over to the left there, not only am I blending between those two animations, your idle animation, which isn't animation, you have to set that up, and your pinch animation, which these are actions in Blender, but they turn into essentially a pose because it's just one frame that gets put in as an animation. But it's really smooth because it's a granular difference with that float value. So you can be halfway in between it and then be like, I'm going to click the grip trigger a little bit, and you can see it totally changes the shape of that animation because now you're going across the middle instead of going across the bottom, which is amazing. And again, yeah, you can do pinch and you can do the grip, which makes it look like you're holding a touch controller in VR, which is pretty funny. And then if you do both, it's going to transition into the third animation, which is that fist. And so it's super simple and easy, and you get 4 different animations out of it, which for something being made in OpenVR, or XR as Unity calls it, is plenty. If I was doing it for Oculus and just Oculus, I would probably want more hand poses than that, because they have like the capacitive sensors for taking your thumb on and off of each button, and the triggers also are capacitive, so if you take your fingers off of that, it does something different. But since I'm just doing this for OpenVR, and we'll probably be making this at some point so it all runs through HTML5, I think that's totally fine and will work great for all the content that I have planned. I might add a 5th animation at some point that's just one finger pointed out so that I can click down buttons with like a collider or something, but for now I think that's totally worthwhile. So yeah, and that is again the same for both of these. The important part is coming up next. So we've made these prefabs now, and these prefabs have animations on them, but we need something to run it. So that's why we copied these prefabs, because we're going to drag whichever one matches, in this case the right presence. We're going to drag the prefab that we made of the FBX into this hand model prefab slot right here, and that's going to override what Valem had as the Oculus hand prefabs that he had us make. And that will then allow us to put those prefabs into our, if I go out of the prefab view here, into our left and right hand model prefab slots. So you're not going to put the Union L or Union R prefabs that you made out of the FBXs into the model prefab here. You're going to put them into the hand presence, and that's got the scripting to make your fingers move because it'll take in your inputs, and then you're going to put these blue box prefabs into the left and right hand. And before you do that, make sure that for both of these you have the right handedness selected over here, because if you have like head or center or something, then it won't grab your hand inputs the way it's supposed to. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Short little 15-minute tutorial to get you guys up and running with your own hand models. Again, make sure that if you're going to do this, you have a nicely made model of a hand that has all the fingers rigged because you're going to want it to be as smooth of an animation as possible. You can see what I did in the previous video when I demoed how my hand works by actually moving the triggers around, and it's super smooth. So just make sure you have a good hand model, and then with this tutorial you should be good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, I'll see you in the field, agents.